Welcome to Momentum Magnet, a podcast to inspire your growth. I'm Karen Morales, and your host in helping you find ways to make positive changes for your business, health, relationships, and life. We always have a path to a happier ending, so let's get started today. Hi, everyone. This is Karen Morales, and you're listening to Momentum Magnet. Today, I am so excited to announce our guest, Sarah Foley. She is a true inspiration and someone that I had the pleasure to meet at a recent event. She's on a mission to redefine what disability looks like. She's a mom, motivational speaker, and an elevation coach who believes the only way to create change is to change the way people see themselves and their circumstances. And her comeback story is nothing short of amazing. She had an ATV accident that left her paralyzed in 2012. And since then, she has committed to heal herself both emotionally and physically. This personal work opened her up to incredible self-love and the opportunities to offer healing and elevation for others going through similar circumstances. And Sarah had a book come out this week. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sarah today and get into our conversation about resilience and recovery during the darkest of times. Hello, Sarah.
Aloha, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me on your show.
Of course. I mean, when I heard your story and I was blown away with how you have managed to create such a beautiful existence after what is a very hard story. And a lot of us have struggled with twists and turns in our lives. And I think it's always great to hear from people who have taken those experiences and really grown through them. So let's go back a little bit, and we're going to talk a lot today about themes like acceptance and comeback and how to reframe hard moments. But why don't you talk us through a little bit about your story and what happened in 2012? Where were you in your life, and what transpired with this accident that sort of changed the trajectory as you knew it in that moment?
Absolutely. So 2012, I literally started on top of the world. At that time, I had begun dating a new guy. We were super in love, having lots of adventures together. I was running a spa up at a ski resort in Park City, Utah, which I had worked really hard to get that position, worked my way up, kind of proven my worth. I was making really good money, more than I'd ever made. I was surrounded by just a really great support network, had a lot of friends and family. And for a weekend getaway, Sean, the new boyfriend, and I, keep in mind, we'd been dating about 6 months at this point, went on this trip to southern Utah, took our the four dogs between us, and another couple. We went down and took some four-wheelers. But the one morning we got up really early, just him and I went out, and he took me on this hike, and it was literally, we went to this lookout moment, and we were just on top of the world. It was like these gorgeous red rock formations. We were the only souls. You didn't see another person anywhere. And I just remember thinking, like, this is what being on top of the world feels like. This is it. And I looked at him and I just said, damn, my life is perfect. There's nothing about it I would change. And we finished up our hike and had a great moment and went back to the cabins and met up with the other couple who they'd brought four-wheelers along with them, ATVs. And so we decided to proceed out on just a really easy ride. We took a picnic with us. It was just one of those rides where we followed this like fire access road. So really wide, no big jumps and cliffs. It was just really easy. And at one point though, we couldn't quite tell where the road led to. It kind of went up and around this bend. And Sean and the other guy decided to go on up ahead to make sure it was safe. They were looking out for me and the other girl. And at one point we see the other guy up on top now. He's made his way up and he's waving us along. He's like, you're clear, come on up. And what we didn't know, and kind of the miscommunication there, was that then Sean proceeded down the bend to let us know that we were good and wanted to come get us. And so we proceeded up. I was in front. And as I went up and I came around the bend, I just saw him and panicked. And my really inexperienced brain just said, get off the trail. Like, whatever you do, get off the trail. And so I did. And he was kind of on the side that he just threw himself to the side of the mountain and literally, like, because he grew up on these machines, just threw himself to the side. And if I would have kept going straight, everything would have been fine. But I panicked and I thought I was braking, but I was gunning it. And I jerked the wheels and I didn't see this ditch and my front wheels caught it. And I just started flipping through the air. And it landed on, it like landed on me as it was flipping multiple times. And then finally threw me against this fallen tree stump. And I was extremely clear at this moment. As I was flipping through the air, I just remember not thinking anything. I remember just screaming, feeling like I was screaming, but no sound was coming out. It just seemed like everything went really silent, except for like this crunching. I could just hear and feel this crunching of bones within my body. And when it finally landed, I could see how far I'd flipped by how far it was taking Sean to run to me. And his face was just covered in panic. And I just screamed to him. I just said, don't move me, call Life Flight, how's my face? And he's make fun of me on this one. But at this point, I'm wearing a helmet, but in my head, I'm like, there's no way I'm not mangled. There's no way from what just happened that I am just drenched in blood. Just every orifice, like I just had this picture in my head, like there's no way I am not mangled beyond recognition. And, but the thing that went through my head, funny what happens to us when we go back to that moment, was my second grade teacher. And so teachers, if you're listening, you've got a big impact on these children. That I remember telling us this story about a motorcycle accident. And the story was that he got in this horrific accident, but it was actually as the people were trying to come over and help him, and he moved him incorrectly, and that's what caused his neck to break, and he passed away. And so in my head, I thought, if I just don't move, since I'm still present, I'm still alive, if I just don't move, I'm going to be fine. So he finally gets over to me, and he just says, babe, your face is fine, but I have no idea about the rest of your body. And so we just
I started you from there, but I want to pause you for a minute because there's something that is so interesting about what you just said, and it resonated with me in a new way because I have a physical challenge, right? I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy when I was 20, and the interesting thing is that I don't know if men have this same visceral reaction as women, which is your first instinct was to say, almost, am I still going to be beautiful in this really challenging moment? Like, is my face ruined or is it damaged? And I know as my illness has progressed and I've had to use some adaptive devices, that idea of feeling good in your skin and feeling attractive no matter what kind of physical challenge you have is a true thing. And it just made me want to stop and have a moment to say, wow, that is a big burden that we as women put on ourselves.
Oh, 1,000%. And I think that we know we've grown and been raised to understand that it is how people look at us that makes all the difference. And I think you're spot on. And I think that especially amongst women, that we already have, our view always goes to everything that we want to change, right? Like we look in the mirror and it's like, I want to change that, I want to change that, I want to change that, rather than really appreciating the things that make us beautiful. And so when you kind of mix the two of the burden of looking beautiful, yet the burden of what we see is usually everything we want to change first, or we see ourselves in a less light than how people are perceiving us, there is like this big disconnect. And yeah, I think it's true. And you know what, you're the first person that's ever really pointed that out. for me, because I was just dissecting this actually with another podcast interviewer of, those three things kind of being the first things that we think of when tragedy strikes. It's like, don't move, call for help, and make sure you're still putting on the game face or the highlight reel on Instagram, right? Like, don't pay attention to the fact that things could be mangled. And so it's funny that it's just now recently come to light, those three things, how interesting they were, that those were the first three things out of my mouth, and how clear I was. I just had flipped through the air, and yet it was just like everything was just silent. And it was just kind of this pause moment of, oh my God, did that really just happen? Like, did that really just happen? And there was a long period of time after the accident where that moment, that thought of like, did that really just happen? Like, is this really my life? And it would kind of be like this punch in the gut thing for me that would take my breath away. And until we can get that out of our bodies, and until we can kind of come to an acceptance of, yes, it did happen. It's hard as hell, not minimizing that, but yes, it did happen. And we have to accept that it happened before we can move on and really start healing.
Oh, that's so good. And I think we could walk through every step of your journey and how you had to go, to the hospital, and how your family came to see you, and how challenging those moments were, how you went to rehab at Craig in Colorado, which is a place that my cousin went after her accident that left her as a quadriplegic. So I think we could dive into all that, but there is something, I think, in your message that will reach everyone, and even the vast majority of folks that won't experience the challenge that you've had, or an illness like I've experienced. But it really is this idea of acceptance. And if that feels okay for you, I would love to dwell there for a while, because I think this is a topic that's not talked about enough. And when you and I were preparing for this conversation, and some of the work we've both done with Tony Robbins, and I know you've been interviewed by him and been on his podcast, but one of the things that's been so beautiful is this idea that you need to be able to accept things even if they weren't what you would pick. And I think sometimes people struggle with this idea of acceptance than they do with something like forgiveness. And I know you're about the journey with forgiveness in your story, and then spend a lot of time talking about the acceptance piece. So I think we can all learn from you in both of those areas.
For sure. And yeah, it's always funny because it is a very long story, and it's kind of the pieces that we want to dive into. And I do believe that acceptance is huge. And here's the thing I'll say about it, and here's how I'll start it. After working and mentoring other women in similar situations, there's this constant idea that if we are somehow happy with our new situation, we're happy and the situation has happened in our life, that somehow that situation has gotten the best of us. Like somehow it's won. And
yes.
And
I totally understand that. Yep.
Right. So, and a girl in my retreat last year, she just put it so well. She said, if I'm happy with this, then it means that it is won. And I'd been dealing with this, but I'd never been able to put it into words in such like that's it, And as she said it, immediately tears around the room, heads nodding, and everyone's just like, yeah, like, how am I supposed to be happy and be in a wheelchair? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's two things, right? It's one, it's the acceptance piece. And two, we're already married to a story about how this is supposed to look, how living with a disability is supposed to look, how a pandemic is supposed to look, how losing a job is supposed to look. We've already had these notions in our head. We've already put some stigmas, some both stereotypes, both personal beliefs, all of that kind of wrapped in this package around this situation. And people will tell me all the time, they're saying, I see, yes, I could never do what you do, or, be happy with my life if that would have happened to me. But I see my problems in the spokes of your wheels, and I see you sitting on top of your problems and overcoming them. So I think that that's why it's translating so much for people. They're seeing me in a situation that they've already married a story to. A lot of us, most of us, I'm sorry to say it, even me, have this idea of what disability is supposed to look like. If you're in a wheelchair, like if I told you or asked anybody probably on the street, when you think of a person in a wheelchair, what are the first things that come to mind? And for me, I'll tell you with all brutal honesty, when I first was injured, the things that went through my mind were unsuccessful, overweight, unattractive, lonely, 30 billion Walmart bags on the back of the wheelchair. That's one I'm still working on. Like, we got to get some better bags, ladies. And you think of all these things that go through your head. So if this is the story that you already have, how on earth could you be anything different? Because you are immediately going to be battling with this. And it was this real internal it was this real devil and an angel on my shoulder kind of thing going on of, I look in the mirror, I don't see disability, yet I'm supposed to be disability. Like, I'm supposed to be all of these negative things because I've never seen anything else. There's the most amazing quote, and I always forget who said it, but it was on the screen during the Beyonce documentary, and it hit me hard. So it says, people cannot be what they haven't seen. And ain't that the truth? Right? Like, we don't realize that we can do it differently. It's like, that is the most insane idea to us. We don't understand that we can do it differently. So as we are journeying through the disability, we're journeying through the new challenge in our life, whether it's job loss, broken relationship, losing a friend, all of these things. First, make a list of what you think that's supposed to look like. And I guarantee that right there is proof why you can't be happy right now. Because you have to first prove all of those things wrong. So, and in order—
Is there a space, do you think, though? I think everything that you're saying is beautiful, and I've definitely applied it to my own life. Because I would say, even with, and we've had some similar challenges. We both faced health challenges. We've both gone through divorces. We've both parented our child on our time alone with a challenge. So running our own businesses, I think we've both experienced a lot of those things. And at the same time, I think both of us have managed to come up with an attitude that is more positive than negative. So in both of our lives, the glass is more half full than it is ever half empty, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, the acceptance question, and maybe that's because of all of the work that many people do around spirituality and the power of the mind. The place I struggle most with acceptance, and I'm dying to hear your answer on this, is I am happy the majority of the time. I love my life and feel like I have been given an opportunity to help others through what I have faced. At the same time, for me, saying I accept my physical limitations means that it is winning, because it feels like acceptance equals I don't have hope for healing. And in the bottom of my heart of hearts, I would prefer if these limitations were gone. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you reconcile that acceptance? And does acceptance mean that you give up hope for the situation to change?
Absolutely not. But
Okay.
I know exactly what you mean. And I think that was what I struggled with the most, was if I accept the fact that I cannot walk, how am I ever supposed to walk again?
Yeah.
Like it's going to somehow send a signal to my body to not wake up, not heal, right? But I've actually come to understand that actually the opposite is true. If we're spending so much time resisting this thing that has already happened, how can we have any energy left to do the work, to actually make our body start moving? And I think that it's kind of like, okay, so you're a mom.
Yep.
I have learned the most things actually through my son, that if I want him to clean his room and I am on him, I'm like, clean your room, like yelling at him, like clean your room. How could it be so messy? How could you do all of these things? This is actually not the way I parent at all. But
we all have those moments though. We all have those moments.
Yeah. But I've learned to really catch myself, because yelling like that doesn't get anywhere. It gets more resistance. It gets more aggravation. It gets more damage to our relationship. It's damaging. However, if we get down on a level and talk about why it's so important to appreciate our things and love our things and cherish our space and love our home and taking care of our home and having the pride that comes in to having a messy room and then putting it all together. A beautiful example of this is my little boy. I took him to the trampoline park. This just happened yesterday. Trampoline park all day long. At the end, of course, what do they want? They want something from the snack bar. And I've got $1 for you. They've got like this little dollar bin. And I said, well, how are you going to earn this dollar? I said, if I give you this dollar, there's not going to be an appreciation. How are you going to earn this? And I said, what is something that you could help me around the house? And after going back and forth, we came up with laundry. So he was going to help me with laundry. And so we get home, and sure enough, I said, okay, let's get started on that laundry. He's like, oh, like, I really don't want to do laundry. I mean, they immediately how did your body get that heavy all of a sudden? Like, they're just like, their whole body drops, and it's like, oh. So talking to him again, you made a promise. There was a pinky promise involved. That's a very serious promise. And talking to him. And then sure enough, we started doing laundry. And as I started to really, really praise him, mind you, he was folding towels. And if you've ever seen a 5-year-old fold a towel, all you want to do is like, let me just do it. Let me just fold it the right way. I'm like, my little perfectionist is coming out and like, Sarah, calm down. He's folding a damn towel. Like, praise beyond praise beyond praise. And he starts putting them away. And then he's folding up his little pants. And he gets to go put them into his drawer, and he finally realizes, look how messy this drawer is. I said, yeah, you don't, you go in there and you rattle it all up and you pull out a pair of pants. And he says, well, we gotta refold all of this. Like, we gotta take care of our drawers, right? So he starts teaching me back. And we have this really beautiful evening. We do like 3 loads of laundry. He's completely redone his drawers and organized them. And he wakes up the next morning, and the first thing out of his mouth, I swear to God, was, Mom, can we do some more laundry today? As a mother, you're like, whoa, win. But what I realized was it came from a place of praise. It came from a place of acceptance that we do need to cherish our homes. And now, and that's what I think about the body. It's like, if I accept my body and I love it and I cherish it, it's like having a friend that you accept through and through, and you don't feel judged. And therefore, you've got way more energy to spend on the friendship and enjoying life versus this resistance. If we can do that with our bodies, we can do that with the situations in our life. If we can actually come to understand that being happy all the time is not an attainable goal, Karen. We shouldn't be happy all the time. That is not living a human experience. There will be sadness, there will be grief, there will be loss, there will be frustration, there will be hurt, there will be anger. Those are all human emotions, and we should be experiencing all of those. If we're trying to be happy all the time, every one of those quote unquote ugly or negative feelings gets trapped in that body. And how do you think that body's going to respond? It's going to resist even more. So if we actually can flip that into finding the joy and happiness in being sad, in being angry, in being frustrated, that to me is like the ultimate goal of happiness. I am not happy all the time, but I actually find so much joy in those moments of pain because I realize that I'm letting it out. I'm experiencing, I'm opening myself up to another level. I'm reaching a whole nother level of understanding and growth within myself, within my body. Because that is, to me, the ultimate self-love. When we can see ourselves without judgment, we can see our own feelings that society deems as ugly and negative as beautiful. That is incredible. That is having this beautiful human experience. That is painting with a single color.
I was going to say, when you talked about the emotions, something really clicked for me that I hadn't thought about so simply, which is this idea that you may accept and love where you are in the present moment. You can accept and love that you will have transient feelings about it, whether it's sadness or frustration or joy or elation. And at the same time, you can hold on, you can accept where you are today, and you can hold out hope and a vision of a different future. And those two things do not need to be in conflict with each other.
No, it's literally flipping this or to an and. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's understanding I can be both.
I can be accepting of my situation today and accepting that I am frustrated, that, some things that I used to do with ease require more skill. And I can be appreciative at the way that I do that and show up with grace and with humor and with humility and with gut and perseverance. And at the same time, by accepting that this is what it is today and not hating myself for it, I can walk to the future. I love that. That is a really great way to reframe it. And I think maybe an easier way, if you're listening and you're facing what feels like in this moment an unsurmountable challenge, we can take it down to maybe a way that more people will experience it, and maybe specifically women listening to this podcast. And it's this idea that a lot of women struggle with body image and how they feel in their own skin. And if you were to apply what Sarah and I are talking about with, more physical challenges, maybe, than just weight alone, we would say, even if you're 500 pounds overweight, you need to get to a level of acceptance with loving the body that you're in. And you can still accept where you are today and be working towards that future. But if you're doing it with a loving intent, you're going to be way more successful. And that, to me, that's an easier example for me to wrap my head around and then apply it to my own situation, which feels a little more complex than just that.
Well, and I think just with everything, it really goes back to get where you want to go. You first have to understand where you are and where you're beginning.
Yeah.
And that comes at an acceptance of an emotional level, but it also comes down to a logical level of, okay, where am I and where do I want to go? And then getting there along the way is setting these goals and showing up for yourself. And it's a goal as simple as not hitting the snooze button and getting up out of bed, or it's as simple as, getting to the gym, or it's as simple as trading the donut for a protein shake. Like, it's as simple as these swaps within our life. But every single time you do that, you are building that self-confidence. You're building within you of like, oh my gosh, like I can do this. I can show up for myself. And that is how we show ourselves self-love. But it all plays together. It's this really intricate dance of, it's understanding where we are. It's accepting it. It's loving it. It's forgiving what got us here in the first place. Yeah. Because typically we go back on repeat. If only this thing wouldn't have happened in my life that put me on this horrible road towards, if using your example of being overweight, right? That can go back to, the way my parents raised me. They didn't teach me how to eat right, or they had a bad breakup and started binge eating, or they got an eating disorder in high school, trying to be perfect. All these things, like, you have to first also forgive what got you there. And these sound like a lot of like things to remember. I feel like even if I was listening right now, like, okay, where do I start? What am I doing? What am I supposed to do right now? Understand the story that you first have attached to your circumstances of how you think it's supposed to be. And then accept the fact that it can be different. It can be completely different. We start to shift our perspective. We accept, we do that in a loving way. Remember little Charlie, my little boy, doing laundry, okay? If you need like a really fun example, that is a huge one for me, and I will never forget that. The resistance did not create the change. It was love, it was appreciation, it was cheering it on. That's what we have to do for ourselves. We have to like beat ourselves up to get any action. When's the last time you beat someone up and you got what you wanted? Like, no, you don't get what you want in that way. So you got to do it in this loving way, and you got to forgive what got you there in the first place. And then from there, man, it's about enjoying this journey to getting there. Like, so often we have these goals, and then once we get there, it's like, oh my God, the road trip was the best part of the trip. How many trips have you been on where there's a road trip involved? I swear we would do them all the time with living in Utah. We'd drive to California, drive to a lot of them to Las Vegas for the weekend. It was super easy. And more often than not, my road trips are the highlight of every trip. It's always that journey to getting there. And that goes with us trying to get to our goals in life as well. That these goals, yes, they're beautiful. And yes, we got to keep going. Like, keep those goals, baby, keep those goals. But getting there, like, that's where we find all the fun. That's where we discover what we really are like, what we've really got inside of us. Like, I would have never thought I was this strong. And I can say that with pure conviction and confidence. I am a strong mother effer. Like, I am strong.
You are.
I have kicked ass in this journey. And I tell you what, that girl that was standing up on the world that thought her life was perfect, her life was quote unquote perfect because it was very easy. She got everything that she thought that she could get. She only went after those goals that she knew that she could get. She never stretched herself. Life was easy. That's why it felt perfect. Now my life is anything but perfect. And I love this woman that is rolling around on this chair. I love this woman. I care about her. I cherish her. I honor the feelings that come up in her. And I also have very big visions of where I want to go, and having that acceptance and having the vision, they have to be together.
That is something that I think is so true. I interviewed a weight loss coach a few weeks ago on the podcast, and Monica works specifically with women that have had many years of setbacks with not being able to get to where they want to go with their body. And she said that the one mindset that she's noticed in all of her clients is that they had so much to give on this earth, and the weight being released awakened a potential that was greater than anything they could have imagined. And when you were talking about that with yourself, I think the same thing in my life. As my disease has progressed, my life has gotten bigger. My meaning and my value and the contribution that I can provide has increased. And surprisingly, my joy and my exhilaration and my adventure aspect has increased tenfold. I think when you're told you try harder, at least in my case. I mean, I will move mountains to try interesting things that people don't think that I could do. whether that's, extreme sit down skiing or scuba diving or jumping off of a 120-foot cliff. I will do things that I maybe would have been scared to do in the past, walk on fire, just to prove that I can. So I do believe what you're saying, that if I think about my journey and I look around this road trip, I would say there's probably been a lot more positives and a lot more interestingly unexpected but beautiful coincidences as the journey has gotten more complicated than not.
And those didn't happen by accident.
No.
Like, those came from you. And I think that people that make it look easy, there can be often this common thing of like, oh, well, she's got resources to make that happen, or she just makes it look easier. It's not that hard for her, compared to me. Like, people will start to compare in that way, and they'll start to downplay the fact that took a lot in you to do that. And just like you said, there's a time and a space when those things seemed impossible. And so there are these steps, and it's all these like stepping stones to take you higher, 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 and higher. That's what my whole Live Vertically message is about, is that we start to use that previous experience to take us to the next level. And those experiences can be the hard ones and the joyful ones all mixed together. But I think that it has to be level by level, and that's where the resilience and the confidence within yourself comes from. You can't just wake up one day and be like, okay, I'm going to go and do sit skiing today. And all of a sudden, and then the days before, you've just been in bed for the majority of your life. There has to be this progression. And so people can get lost in the bigness of the things that maybe they want to do. And it starts by showing up for yourself on a regular basis. And that's why actually weight loss is so, and fitness, physical fitness is so powerful, because you actually get to see your results in the mirror of you showing up for yourself. Like, that is such a big one. That is now, I work with women with disabilities in that very way. And having them show up for themselves on a consistent basis, all of a sudden they're living a life that they're like, this was not possible 6 months ago. And it's reminding them it came from them, reminding them that was all they're doing, and that it came level by level with building confidence within themselves.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, and I think we've covered, a lot of issues, and especially if we can just help somebody rethink about acceptance that maybe is facing any issue in their life that feels hard, whether it's a work issue, a relationship issue, a physical issue, a family issue, a money issue. If they can think about reframing their story and taking some time and some deep breaths to really say, it's okay to be okay with where I am right now. And even if I'm okay with where I am right now, it does not mean that I can't have hope for this future. And if this idea still hasn't broken through for you, I think you take the idea of forgiveness. And by forgiving someone, you're choosing to remove the anger from your heart, but you're not necessarily saying what you did was correct. So you can have forgiveness and still not validate the other person's action. It's just you're not harboring those negative feelings anymore, because it only brings you down. So for me, the forgiveness one has always been an easier idea to accept than acceptance. But I think you took me to the next level today in rethinking how to love what is and still work towards what it is that I want, but in a loving way and not such a scary, I'm not doing enough, I'm not getting what I want fast enough type of mindset, which can be hard for high achievers sometimes. Like, I'm used to making things happen in my life, and not being able to make this happen has been frustrating. And it's only in 20 years of facing this situation that I've finally come to the conclusion that making it happen isn't the lesson. Accepting what is with more love and compassion and less hustle
in my current view is the lens and the lesson that I needed.
Well, and we all need different lessons, but
Yeah.
right? The biggest thing that comes to mind as you're talking about being okay is that we tend to, actually, no, I firmly believe that the mother of all disappointment is this attachment to an expectation. And so it's typically us being expecting our lives to look a certain way and go a certain way. And then when they don't, that's when we get super upset. And so there's this line that I cannot take credit for. This was one of the very first articles that was written about me. And the journalist, I was like, man, you nailed it. You just nailed that one-liner. She said she always knew that she was going to be okay, but she didn't know what okay would look like. I always knew that I was going to be okay. Like, things are just, they had to work their way out. Like, this is my life. There's no way that they could not work themselves out. But you get really attached to the way that you think that they're going to look. And so if we can start to really take on that, we don't know what okay is going to look like. We don't know the path that's going to lead us there. And so I used to do this thing all the time. I ran this retreat last year, and it was the first time I'd run a retreat, and I had no idea what I was doing. It was just really like, I was just going for it. But I would do something all the time, and I would hold my hands over my head, and I would like hold my vision, and I would kind of like, just like I have this ball in my hand, and I was just kind of molding it around, and that's my vision, and hold it of how I wanted the people to feel at the event. And then at the end, I would just kind of like set my arms free for the details to come into place the way that they're supposed to, not the way I think that they should. And I still had a lot of attachment to some control. It was my first one. I am learning on this sucker. But if we can go about how we want to feel and then let go of the details of how we think we're supposed to get there, how much more enjoyable is that going to be for us on our way to attaining this? We're not going to be so attached, and it goes back to that resistance piece. We're not going to resist it so much, so we're going to allow for things to take shape the way that they're supposed to. And I really do feel that things are always supposed to work themselves out. And we have to forgive ourselves for having that attachment in the first place. Of course, we're attached to it. It's okay. It is okay. If this is the first time you as a listener is hearing this and really trying to come to terms with this piece of forgiveness, it's okay that you've become so attached to how you think things were supposed to go. So forgiving yourself first is massive. And then go through of like, what are you really holding on to that needs to be forgiven? Is it a person? Is it a circumstance? Is it how you were raised? Is it your parents? Is it a job? Is it a boss? Is it, a disability that you were born with or an accident that happened? What do you need to forgive, and the details around that? For me, as I told the story, it was me coming up around this bend and seeing Sean. And it wasn't until about 6 or 7 years post-injury, I was injured in 2012, that I finally had the realization that I was holding him hostage in my mind of every time something went bad or I had a bad day, my immediate thought, and this comes back to awareness and acceptance. We cannot change the things that we do not accept or are not aware of. In my mind, I would always go back to, well, he didn't put me in this stupid chair. How ugly is that? How awful is that? He was coming down to keep me safe, but it was an accident. It was a miscommunication in the fact that he did come around the bend. And in my head, instinctually, without even realizing it, for about 6, 7 years, I was immediately going to that in my head of like, well, he didn't put me here. If he did not put me in this chair, I would not be having this bad moment or this hard day. A lot of that usually comes down to my bowel and my bladder that still are paralyzed and I have issues with, or, just not being able to reach something, or, a tire going flat, and it's like walking around all day without a foot, like it, going through these things. But that's immediately where I would go. And so I had this moment of wanting to just release that and forgive him, forgive the circumstances, forgive everything around it. And then I swear to you, it was like taking this squeegee across this filthy window, and it was pure clarity. I could see where I wanted to go. I could see what was keeping me stuck. I could see what was hindering and hurting our relationship. I could see what was hurting me. I could see all of that so clearly. So forgiveness equals clarity on like every level you could imagine.
I don't think you could have summed this up better. I think all of us learned something, or a lot of things, from Sarah today. And just this idea that you start first with forgiveness and you march towards acceptance. And both of those actions and really beautiful and big emotions never mean that you're losing or you're quitting on your dreams. I think that's truly beautiful. And I thank you so much for your time. Now, for the people that are listening that are saying, how do I work with this prophet? How do I get her in my corner? What can they do, and where can they read your book? You have a chapter featured in a book that came out this week, which I read, which was lovely. So I wanted to give you a chance to tell people how to get in touch with you and where to go on Amazon to get your book.
Thank you so much. So I go by Vertical Blonde across the board. So if you forget my name, Vertical Blonde is a little bit more catchy. People seem to always remember that. verticalblonde.com, and then on every platform is Vertical Blonde. And it is this idea of living vertically. It is this idea of using every experience to level up our lives, both the good and the bad, and live iconically, like really, really redefine what life is supposed to look like for us. So you can follow me there. And then the book is called Your Second Act. Such an honor to be featured in this book. It is a collection of inspiring stories of overcoming and resilience, and really making that comeback in your second act of life. I sort of feel like I'm going into my third and fourth right now, but that's another conversation. But it's by Patricia Heaton. You'll know her. She's the mom from Malcolm in the Middle, and Everybody Loves Raymond. You know her face. She's working on multiple projects. And she had this idea of putting out this book called Your Second Act. And it is a collection of these stories. And I thought it was going to be more everyday people. And as I have been reading the book, because I only got to hear do the interviews for my own and not know who else was in it. But you've got Dave, who, from Dave's Killer Bread. You've got Jim Carroll, who is responsible for Marriage Boot Camp on TV. So you've got some big names, and it was that moment where I realized I'm doing it. I'm leveling up, and I want to just finish with that. But first, you can find that on Amazon. You can listen to it on Audible. I listen to all of mine. It's also funny hearing someone else say my words as I'm listening to it on Audible. It's been a fun experience. But working with Patricia has been absolutely powerful. And as I've gotten to know her personally, she sent me this beautiful gift, and it's a kintsugi kit. And kintsugi is this Japanese art form in which a plate or bowl breaks, and they actually fill the break with gold, and then they glue it back together with gold. And it's thought that the crack is actually part of the history of the item, and it becomes celebrated. And she said, Sarah, you have learned to fill your cracks and your scars with gold. And I empower everyone listening right now that there is a way that you can fill your cracks and your scars and your hardships with gold. That is pure alchemy. It is turning your life, your hardship, your struggle into gold. So I encourage you to do so. But yeah, it's been a fabulous experience.
That's our perfect ending. You got to fill your cracks with gold. I love that. Hopefully everybody will espouse that and remember you in this conversation as they walk into their next act. So I thank you so much. Aloha, because I know you're all the way in the Hawaiian time zone.
Yeah.
And thank you for your time today. It was such a pleasure. And I think we have more topics to talk about. So I look forward to having you back some days soon.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you very soon. Aloha.
Thank you, everybody. Aloha. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Momentum Magnet. We're here every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to share inspiring comeback stories. We want to hear your reviews and love getting your subscriptions on iTunes and Spotify. For show notes and past episodes, visit momentummagnet.com. I'm Karen Morales, keynote speaker, writer, and founder and CEO of Marketing Magnet, a fast-growing marketing agency for purpose-driven companies. Whether you are a business needing an agency or if you are looking for weekly tips to get ahead, sign up at marketing-magnet.com to receive our weekly inspiration on getting more in your life and business.